Excellent. All right. So with that, I'm excited to kick things off, and we're going to introduce our panelists. I'll put up your bios on screen, but if you ladies want to kind of just speak to it yourselves, you're more than welcome. First off, we have our fabulous Vaidehi Patel, who's also part of the Single Shaadi podcast
Yeah.
network. Vaidehi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Radha. Absolutely. So, my name is Vaidehi. I'm in the greater Chicago area. First got introduced to Single Shadi while I attended one of their events and hosted a couple events. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be on this amazing panel with other amazing women. My focus is usually on trying to help other people that are in the dating scene that are struggling, that may have had a similar background like mine. And so my page, Life of Faith, he goes over a lot of dating tips. I host singles events. And like Radha mentioned, the cat's out of the bag. There'll be a podcast coming soon. And
Is Josiane? Yeah.
yeah,
So
so
the people in the audience, if you could mute yourselves, and then we'll definitely Q&A. We'll put
Oh,
it
sorry.
in the chat. Let's see if I can just mute all participants. And then panelists, can you guys unmute yourselves?
Hello.
Perfect. All right. All right. Cool. All right. Well, Vaidehi, thank you so much. And yes, sorry, I guess I wasn't supposed to let it go, but we're let it out already. But we're very excited for that show to come out. Next up, we have Dr. Maneesha Ahluwalia. Maneesha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Maneesha Ahluwalia, and you know how when you're stuck in these situations, let's say a bad work environment or a bad relationship, and you have this like inkling inside of you that you want out, but you have a really hard time either getting clear on what you want to say to get out of it, or even just like having the courage to say that you don't want this anymore, and that you want something different. That's what I want to do with Indian women, basically just bring out that confidence that we all have inside of us so that we can say the thing that we've been wanting to say, because it's so hard sometimes to do the thing that's going to disappoint other people. And we get stuck in this pattern of people pleasing and just staying small. And I want us to break free of that. And I've done that countless times in my own life. And then I got certified as a coach, and now I help other people do the same. Thank you.
Amazing. And Manisha was she was our featured keynote speaker at our third annual speed dating event last year. That's when we got to meet. And then she just did amazing work with the singles on site. And so we're so excited to have you back and working with us again.
Thanks. Lucky me, you guys came to Baltimore where I live. So.
Awesome. All right. Next up, we have Amrutha or Curry Bradshaw. I guess I also let that slip, but go ahead, Amrutha.
Well, no, we want everyone to know that Amrutha and Kari Bacha are the same person. Kari Bacha just came to be as a joke on the name Carrie Bradshaw. It's hard for me to even say Carrie Bradshaw now. From Sex and the City. The whole thing started off as me talking about kind of these ridiculous dates that I've been on. And then kind of the pressures of being, a South Asian woman in her 30s, really feeling that pressure to find someone and settle down. And it slowly turned into kind of self-discovery lessons I've learned through dating, through figuring things out for myself, the various ways in which I've been inspired and feel empowered myself. And the goal is to help other women feel less alone. You're not the only one struggling through the dating scene, singledom, everyone else around you, maybe all your close friends, it feels like they're growing without you and you're feeling left behind. All those feelings are completely valid and normal, and you're not the only one feeling them. I'm feeling them too sometimes, but lately it's been all about perspective shift for me. And I'm a much happier person for it, regardless of my status in life. And so I just want to help other women feel the same empowerment.
Wonderful. Thank you. And last but not least, we have Mohini Gima. Mohini, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. I am Mohini, calling in from San Diego, California. And my roots, my mom is from Pune, India, and my dad is from Gujarat. And I'm first generation Indian and have been navigating life as a traditional Indian woman, yet being in America and figuring out what that is like to explore life beyond traditions. And maybe you can relate to that. I checked off all the boxes. I did all the things that I was supposed to do to be happy and successful and felt really empty inside. And thus began my journey of really exploring what does it look like to live a life that is actually true to me. Maybe you can relate to that. I feel like our culture really puts a lot of pressure and expectations and timelines. And yeah, so now I'm in a space where I'm helping other women through Rani Rising, which is similar to Phoenix Rising, if you've heard of that, of really being able to start your next chapter wherever you are and explore what it means to live true to you. What does that actually mean? So that's me, and I'm excited.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and pull this back over. So with that, just make sure you can. Just give me 1 second to pull my notes over, guys.
We want participants to turn on their videos.
They're welcome to if they want, but it is being recorded. So definitely if you guys, you're welcome to, we'd love to see your faces, especially if you do have a question and we read it, definitely come on screen and we can have you ask it directly. So, okay. So as I mentioned earlier, we've been talking about this for a couple of months now, trying to figure out what we wanted to talk about. Was it just going to be about dating and relationships? Was this going to be about, like diving into mental health? And we really kind of came up with this core theme about how we want to shift our belief systems in a way that allows women to build trust in themselves and using their choices and their, and making empowerment in their choices to build the future that they want. We really want to kind of move as a mindset shift from that pre-empowered life of victimhood, woe is me, why is this happening? I can't do anything to change, to becoming more of that empowered self, right? Using your belief systems that are changing, making sure that you're building trust in yourself and whoever and whatever that you're surrounding yourself with, and then having that belief that things will get better one day, that shift from victimhood to empowerment. So with that, as I mentioned, we have three overarching topics. Our first one that we're going to dive into is around career. As women these days, we're expected to juggle a lot. There's an expectation that we have to earn and be family oriented, and whatever that means, we're going to dive into that. But there's just a lot on our plates. So we wanted to take some time to really just dive in to see if you're working, if you have your own business, what does that look like in the modern world, and what that means. So with that, I want to start off with under career, talking about navigating that growth and balance. I'm going to direct this question to Maneesha first, but obviously everybody can chime in. And against audience, if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat as well. But Maneesha, you've had some interesting career, trajectories in your life, and moving from medical doctor to being a life coach now. Could you tell us maybe a little bit about what challenges have you faced while you were balancing this career growth with maybe some of the other personal responsibilities that you've had, maintaining work-life balance and overcoming that burnout mentality?
Absolutely. And doctors know a thing or two about burnout. It's an epidemic at the moment. Just a little bit more background. I am 49 at the moment, and my mom always said I wanted to be a doctor from the get-go. I actually don't remember saying that, but I did the thing. And my dad challenged me around college. He was like, you don't work hard enough to be a doctor. So of course, I had to prove him wrong. And then I went to medical school in the Caribbean and started having a little bit of imposter syndrome, I would say, because I went to a Caribbean medical school, although I was a US citizen. And, people around me kind of went to US schools. People had lots of options and where they were going to go to medical school. I had one school, I had one residency interview. I just kind of like kept it bare minimum and made it through. And I think there was a lot of what I was doing that I thought I needed to do and thought I wanted to do. And as I was working as a physician, the burnout was happening because I wasn't doing what I actually loved. When you think about being a doctor, at least I thought you're going to spend a lot of time with people, you're going to talk with people, you're going to heal people, you're going to really be their coach and their guide through their health journey. And what it turns out to be is completely different. I'm sorry for anybody who's thinking about the medical career or is in their medical career, but some of the realities are what I'm talking about. And the reality of being a doctor is that you don't spend a lot of time with people. You don't spend a lot of time with the patient. In fact, I would, out of a 100-minute encounter, 10 minutes are with the patient and the other 90 minutes are sit, at a computer screen. And it's really disheartening. And so I was starting to feel not so well within myself, but I don't think that was the whole story. The other part of the story was that at this last job I was in, I was already experiencing fertility issues. So the other part of my story is that when my ex-husband and I got married, we had come to the conclusion that we wanted to work internationally. We wanted to work abroad. We wanted to work with Doctors Without Borders. He had been a returned Peace Corps volunteer. I was already working with Doctors Without Borders. And he felt like this was his calling too. And we decided, okay, that's our life. We're going to put children to the side. That's not going to be part of our life going forward. And then we got married. We ended up in Uganda on our first mission together with Doctors Without Borders. So we spent our first year in marriage in Uganda, living in a group house, living and working among the same 10 people. The boss of the project ended up dying. I became boss, which means I became my husband's boss. It was all very, very weird. Anyway, he got the feeling that everybody behind, like back home, was marching forward in their family journeys, right? So they were having children. Our cousins, our friends, everybody was having children. Then he decided he wanted children. And I was like, wait, we decided already. So in the middle of burnout at work, there's this dissonance happening in my marriage. Huge dissonance, right? Like, how do you reconcile these two things, especially when you already decided ahead of time? And enter the world of mansplaining and in-law issues based on all of this, fertility appointments. And then one day at work, this patient with HIV, probably very fearful of his status in life as he was not doing well with his medications and was having a hard time, really taking them, which means your HIV is not going to get better. I ended up yelling at him and I didn't know what had happened in that moment. I just did not recognize myself. And of course, after practicing for 15 years, to have this kind of encounter that really like jolted my own awareness back into like, whoa, something's really wrong, something's really off. And I realized, it's not only burnout at work, but it's burnout in all facets of life, in my relationship, in my career, in my relationship with my patients. Like it was just really not working. So I think at that point I had already entered the world of coaching. In other words, I was already a client of coaching. So I had coaches of my own. And what that did for me was to just allow me to understand what my thoughts and beliefs were in all of these facets of life. And it was not gelling, right? There was so much misalignment. I was working the wrong job. I was in the wrong career. This relationship was not going in the right direction. I was putting my body and my mind through lots of challenges trying to get pregnant for this person who wanted a baby. And I honestly didn't actually want one. And I had known that before I met him, and I knew it in the marriage, and I was still going through IVF, adopting Indian embryos, like the whole thing, and I just kind of lost myself. And that was my point of self-reflection. I was like, this is not right. But I think what I realize is that not just me, but women in general, and I would hope that most of us have realized at this point, is that we have a very strong intuition, and I have a very strong intuition. And I know what feels right, and I know what doesn't feel right. And so in those moments, it was just becoming glaringly obvious that so many things didn't feel right, and I was choosing to ignore them, and I ignored them for too long. And I would say, the way I now deal with this burnout or balance is one thing that Brene Brown has suggested in one of these reels. You may have seen it on Instagram, is like, what is my capacity? When I get home at the end of the day, where am I on a scale of 1 to 100? Am I batting a 25 or am I batting an 80? Like, how much do I have left to give to other people around me? So that's a check-in that I think really helps me. And it would be helpful if whoever else was in my home or in my environment was doing the same thing, right? Because then we can come together and fill in the gaps. But when you're not aware of your battery, when you don't have a check-in process, or I did not have at that point, I think it was really hard for me to be aware, and also just it was easy to go into burnout. So I was definitely burning out without checking in. And I think checking in with myself through the awareness of having a coach, through the awareness of this battery tool or hack, that was helpful. And then the other thing is like, what do I actually like to do? And am I doing enough of it? And I started realizing that I missed playing tennis. And tennis was something I grew up with, and it's something I bonded with my dad over. And now I play competitive tennis regularly, 3-4 times a week. I'm on multiple teams. So I would say like I wasn't doing a lot of that. I wasn't doing the things that I really, really love doing. I wasn't on the tennis court. I wasn't getting sun. I wasn't hanging out with friends. I was also just like in bad shape. And I just wasn't taking care of myself. So I think like it became very clear that my self-care had taken a backseat, and I was doing a lot more for everybody else's wishes and all the things that I thought I should be doing for my patients and for my husband and my in-laws and my parents. And it just needed some tweaking. And the tweaking came from checking in, getting coached, getting aware, doing some more things, like adding more things that actually were the things I like doing. And I think that's where I started to find a lot more balance. And at the end of the day, I found my voice, and I found the courage to say, this is not working. I don't want to pursue motherhood. I actually don't want to do IVF one more time. I actually don't want to take these embryos and try another time to have them implanted. I actually don't want to do surrogacy. I actually don't want to do adoption. Like, to actually bring those words up through my chest, into my throat, out of my mouth. It's so hard. It's so hard. And to say that to a man that you think is your soulmate and who thinks like we had this dream together that we built, and to say that to him and then like go to the divorce hearing and like shaking, trembling, and trying to sign those divorce papers. The only way to do it, I would say, is at that point, I had so much awareness of my strength and my intuition that, you know, you really have to like sum up all that courage to steady yourself and sign the damn paper. And that's the only way it's done. You know, like you really got to get clear on what is your truth. And I don't know I could have done that without a coach and without just like having all these other voices around me telling me other ways of living life than the way I thought I was supposed to be living. And I
So
hope
you
that answers.
really went, yeah, you really went from that victimhood, like I'm not in control, this is all happening to me, to taking charge. And if you want to share with the team, with the audience, kind of what you're doing now in the career, and then I'll throw it over to the rest of the panels. But how did you shift from that victimhood to where you are now in your empowered life?
Yeah, I didn't know what coaching was, but when I experienced it as a client, I got a whiff of what it could be like. And I realized, you know, it matched a lot of my unmet needs in medicine. And that is, I get to spend time with people, and I get to actually heal with them, and I get to heal them. But not only that, it's a way of getting to know yourself. Nothing gives you the power than really getting your thoughts mirrored back to you. And so when I saw that happening for myself and I experienced it for myself, I kind of just decided maybe medicine is not for me, maybe this is for me. So I decided to enroll in a coaching certification program. And the moment I started coaching, like practice coaching, I realized like that was definitely a calling in a way that medicine never was. And it gave me, I think, a little bit more encouragement, strength, empowerment to move forward with those moves, which means starting to cut back on medicine and starting to build up this practice of coaching that has now become the only thing that I do. Like I did the hybrid thing for a little while, but then it became very clear that coaching was my calling. And it was right around that time that Seema Auntie on Netflix had her show,
Oh,
and
our
I was
favorite
like,
Seema.
oh my God, all these Indian people doing all these things that their parents expect them to do, and really it's not their choice. And they're just like holding back on what's true to them. And I'm like, God, there's such a need in our culture, in our population, especially people living outside of India, where we have a chance to do the things that we want to do. And so like to take an Indian girl who became a doctor, who left medicine and then did this other thing, and then also decided not to have kids and decided to divorce her ex-husband who's Indian. It's just like a lot of things that people don't think of doing because we just don't think we're supposed to. And so I think that transition became just like an invitation to just live as loudly as possible. And it became like just a drive like no other. There's no way I could have turned back and not done coaching, and not left medicine. There's no way I could turn back now. So.
Amazing. Panel, I'd like to ask you all as well. How do you guys juggle the pressures of career advancement with personal or other family commitments you might have? Feel free to jump in, whoever.
Yeah, I think I can jump in. I have a similar story to Maneesha where I also start my life in medicine and am here with a complete career change. I went into the IT world and I also think it found me as some type of a calling. And I just knew from the get-go, like our family kind of drove it, three careers in our brain, right? It's like medicine, lawyer, whatever, my, engineer, lawyer, medicine, like there was no other choice. And I too wanted to be a doctor. And I think life really told me that wasn't my path in so many ways. I worked as a nurse because I really like to help people. And I wanted to always climb the corporate ladder. And so I think with all of that, we have the opportunity to do it, right? Like as from the get-go, you're not um raised to be a mother from we have the opportunity outside of India to pursue anything and live the American dream, and I always talk about that. But I think along with that comes direction, like which way does life kind of pick for me to do my my calling. And I recently just a couple of years ago, I'm 35, and I think recently I realized I miss nursing in a sense because I miss helping people. And so part of my journey and all my side hustles that I talked about is like helping people. And so if I can fulfill that in other ways, why am I breaking every emotion? Like being a nurse at the bedside is a lot because it's emotionally draining, mentally draining, physically draining. Lifting patients is so much like on your body. And so, juggling that and then coming to that moment was fulfilling, but it took me so many years to kind of figure that out.
Amrutha, Mohini, do you guys want to chime in? We're talking about how to juggle the pressures of career and advancing in your career with the other commitments in your life.
Yeah, I was gonna speak to the mention that Maneesha said of like getting back into tennis. And my thought was that like as we get older, and once we have I think freedom to do more things, but then are also chasing our career, we tend to lose sight of our hobbies and like things that actually we did that kept us busy or kept our body moving, and the various little things that brought us joy, maybe as growing up, or maybe it was even thrust upon us as kids that, we had to take swimming lessons or tennis lessons or go to dance or go to music or whatever it was. And I think we have a tendency to like lose sight of those things. And I, over the past couple of years, started to realize, especially when I moved to like a new place, I was like, how do I make new friends? And I know that can be a whole other topic, but then I was like, what are the ways that I made friends as children? As like as a kid or as I grew up as a teen, whatever. And I was like, I was either in class with people or I had hobbies that I was in a class with other people, whether it was tennis, dance, whatever. So I realized that I love dance so much and I made it a point to go back into dance class, and that's how I've met some of my friends, because just common interest. And just even just going to dance and how much joy that brought me, and that I'm able to, even when I was very like heavily chasing a career and very heavily like making almost everything about me about work and about how I get that next job and what that next job is. And I was also like, well, I'm going to take a dance class. I'm going to take a dance class and try to keep that as my sort of balance, or kind of make sure I have at least one thing, even if I don't go every week or if I don't go every time, like make sure I schedule one. I started going to like salsa nights around town and just being like, just give me some reason to dance and exert any of that other pent up energy that's not getting released at work. But in terms of like a career in general, I'm in an in-between place right now. I just lost my job that I was like so sure that it was going to be like everything to me. And then losing that job just kind of made me realize that like, I think I'm done trying to make my career my identity, because I have so much more to offer than what my job title is. Because at the end of the day, like you can be replaced at work. Somebody else will take my job. And so I am more than my career identity. And so now I'm very much in the mindset of like, cool, I do need a job because I have bills to pay, I have student loans to pay,
Yeah.
I have eggs to buy, those are expensive these days. So like I need a job because I need to, pay to live. But I don't need to have it. It doesn't need to be the highest paying. It just needs to be reasonably paying. And it doesn't, I'm not striving so hard to climb any corporate ladder. I'm like, cool, I did that for like a long time. In 10 years of my career, I got to this place and I'm quite content with being quite mid right now. Realizing that like, I really don't want to put so much energy into work. I want to put a reasonable amount of energy into a job and a career path that I enjoy, be able to disconnect from it at the end of the day and be able to afford to take dance classes and go do other things that I want to do. And so that's how I've been really like balancing my life out, when the past like at least like 5 to 8 years have been all about the grind and what that next job is and how I can go around saying like, oh, I have this title and oh, I work for this company, and being able to name drop that, which
And that's kind of where conversations go, right? So, like, what do you do?
yeah,
The first thing
what do you
question.
do? Where do
So
you
that
work? What,
Yeah,
yeah.
that takes me to our next topic, with the changing roles that are happening right now, gender biases in the workplace, DEI kind of being dismantled, how maybe, people aren't realizing that this affects women disproportionately, not just people of color, and us as women and people of color, it's a double minority. So I'm going to tee this up for Moini first, and then panel, you guys can jump in. But in your opinion, what would you say are some key factors that contribute to being successful in a career environment, especially for women in today's world? And do you think that the recent changes in the political climate are going to help or hinder as we try to, if we do have the ambitions to go up that corporate ladder?
Oh, what a question. So I think it depends. The last question, will it help or hurt? I think it depends. I think there's a lot up in the air. And I feel like a big thing, in Manisha, that what you shared about capacity, that's a big one that I think applies whether it's in the professional setting or home life or with friends or with family. What is your capacity? And as women, we, truth be told, we tend to carry a lot of the mental load and emotional load. If there's children involved, not children involved, we tend to carry a lot, let's be real. And so in the house, out of the house, there's a lot that happens. And so how does that show up in the professional world? I feel like this relates very much to the first question also. If we're burnt out at home because we're doing the most, we're cooking, cleaning, doing everything, that's going to lead into potential burnout at work. If you're getting burnt out at work because you're saying yes to a bunch of projects, you're doing a bunch of side things, then maybe you're not getting paid for it, or you're getting burnt out. That's going to follow through it at home life. And so it really, I don't really believe that there's a way to fully compartmentalize and separate. I think we can try, and there are some ways to kind of say, okay, I want to keep work at work. Depends on the work though. Like we said, I was a speech pathologist. I worked in healthcare and education. The emotional load of working with people, even if I kept the documentation at work, the mental load, the emotional load was still there of, oh, this patient, I could have done this differently, or what about this kid's parents, or this elderly person's who has Alzheimer's. There's just constant. I mean, does anyone relate to just the many windows that are going on? And so I feel like it's really interesting to kind of just think about the capacity. And then with that comes, how can we ask for help? It seems so simple, yet it's not something that many of us were modeled or taught to do. And at least for me, I grew up seeing my mom doing the most. And it was a badge of honor of almost of how much shit she could do. How many things she could take care of. And that's not something I want to carry on. I don't want that badge. Thank you. Take that. You can have that. I don't want that one. I'm not taking that on. And so part of my journey has really been as an overgiver, a recovering overgiver, and a recovering perfectionist, a recovering overachiever, and wanting to do the most in every aspect of my life, similar to what Amrita said, like, can I do less? And by doing less, that means I need to delegate and ask people to help me. And it's not a weakness, even though that is what many of us have been told and taught, even if it was indirectly, that what does it look like to actually get support so that you're not getting burnt out, so that you're not um it's not impacting you at in the workplace and at home. And it really is a skill, I believe, to ask for help and to delegate. Guess what? They're not going to make dinner the same way you're going to. They're not going to load the dishwasher the same way. And you just got to pick your damn battles. They might not you might not write the email the same way at work. They might not do the way that you would do it. Yo, just let it go. Learn to let that is just the, you know, it gets done. If it gets done, it gets done, and it's better than it getting done perfectly. That's it.
Yeah, I think us as millennials, we grew up in that hustle culture, that girl boss culture, and you're seeing a lot. Like, I know we have Gen Z clients, and I'm learning a lot from them that they kind of have like a fucking attitude about work, and I'm loving it. Right? Like they're gonna talk back, like not talk back, but like they're gonna push it back against bosses. They're not here for busy work, and they're gonna take credit. They're not gonna just assign it to the next person. So I think hopefully we are evolving as women, and we're trying to do better for ourselves. But our millennial crew, it's still drilled into our head. Other panelists, you guys want to chime in, like unique factors of being a woman in today's career environment that you have experienced? And we actually have a question from the audience too. Maybe you guys want to tackle this. Somebody, Princey is asking, why does it feel like success is always so far away? Like, why are we always striving? And maybe you guys want to address that in your personal capacity.
Yeah, I was going to say that the benchmarks of success are what we're chasing. So it depends on where that benchmark is positioned, how far it is. And I heard a quote, and it was like, do you ever think about how we're always striving for success because we keep moving that benchmark, right? We get to a specific spot, and then we keep raising it to be the next thing that defines success, or the next thing that, is our standard that we're trying to achieve, or anything like that. And so success can be really relative. And it just depends on how you feel. Like I just spoke about how, to me before, I was really chasing my career. And so the success was like, can I make it to that huge company with that big name so I can name drop it? And like people will be like, oh, she struggled so much in her career and she made it and she got to this big company and has this, title and all this other stuff. And then that's what I'm saying. Even when that company had layoffs and I was laid off, and I was just like, okay, well, this kind of sucks. But then I'm like, but why am I letting that define me and who I am and what my success is? To some extent, like, yeah, it's great. I got there, the itch was scratched. But I started to realize that cannot be my everything. It would be like me saying I'm successful. I'm like, if I get married, I'm successful, right? Or saying that if I get divorced, I'm a failure, which, like, as we all know, that cannot be the way that we define success or failure even. In the same way we can say that, like, I failed in being able to retain that job even if it wasn't my fault, or if it wasn't my doing. Did I fail? No, I actually chose to see that as like, okay, well, there's a reason I'm not supposed to be here, even though all I wanted was to be here in this job. But even my manager was even like, you're taking this really well. Like, aside from like the fact that I was like shocked to be receiving the news, but he's like, you're taking this surprisingly well. And I was like, well, it's clear that I'm meant to do something else and not be here. Otherwise, this wouldn't be happening. If I was supposed to be here the same way that I so badly wanted to be here, it would have worked out and it would have been good. Like, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And so that's how I really I chose that perspective. I chose to see it that way and not look at it as a failure, but instead some other lesson that, like, the universe is pushing me towards something else. And
Stepping
maybe
stone towards a future success.
right. And
Yeah,
maybe I don't know what that is right now, but I'm in between. I'm on that journey to get to that next thing. And when that next thing comes, I'll be able to recognize it and say, ah, this is why. This is why this other job that I wanted so badly, this career spot that I wanted so badly, had to let me go because I needed to get to this new space.
exactly.
And
Maneesha, do you want to chime in? And then I think we have an audience question she's going to get on camera. You're on mute, hon.
Happy to let the audience member go first. Totally fine.
Sarah, do you want to get on camera? You have an amazing question.
Hi.
Yes, go.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, I just posted that because I have been going through this very big change in my life. So just a little background. I've been, in this very large, prestigious health system for many years, as I'm sure many of us can relate to that. And, being a part of this huge, system with various titles. I was very much involved with education. I was the associate chief. I had so many titles, and I really enjoyed being in those roles for a very long time. And I really did excel in that to a certain extent. And then in the last few years, I noticed that I was just getting burnt out. I have two young children. One of them, turned out to be autistic. So I just felt like my priorities were just changing. And naturally, I'm very family oriented, and I was trying everything I could to get my son like all the services that he needed, and just very aggressive with that. And that really took a lot of time, which, I'm thankful and grateful that he actually was able to phase out of it. So he's one of those few children that was able to phase out. But as you can imagine, that really took a toll on my experience at work. And there were like various complaints that came up over the last couple of years, and more so in the last year. And because I was the site director of education, all of these complaints kind of got filtered to me. I was like, oh, let's blame Syra for everything. And some things, were valid in the sense that I wasn't as present as I was before. But then there were some comments that were so outrageous that weren't even true. And that was like my last straw where I was like, okay, this is it. And I actually wanted to pursue my own practice for a very long time. So I just took that step and pretty much resigned from this job. But as you can imagine, it's very liberating. It's empowering. It was a huge moment for me to gather that courage to say basically like, no, fuck this shit. I'm leaving this system because you guys don't deserve me. Like and I've had a lot of coaching. I know Maneesha through like, Ali's program. So that has helped me tremendously. And I think without having that background of, being coached, I would not have been able to do that. But as I'm going through this process, I still haven't reached my final day there yet. It's coming up in a few weeks. I just find myself feeling torn because there's that old Syra that is like, oh gosh, like what did I do? Like it's like going back to, oh my God, like, do I really want to give this up? Like giving up the titles, but then I'm like, no, like I do want to do this. And I know there's like a passion that I've had for a long time that I just haven't uncovered. And just like how Curry was saying, it's that gut feeling. Like it's that gut feeling that was always driving me like all throughout. And I can't help but still like just want to just keep pushing forward and just figuring out the thought that I'm really trying to hold on to is that it's okay if I don't have it all figured out now. Because like the like OCD in me is like, oh, everything has to be lined up, and I have to make sure that I have all the patients lined up, and I'm gonna make enough money out of this, and like to basically plan for every uh, con- uh contingency, like always have the backup plan. And I'm just so used to that structure, getting your paycheck and getting that prestige. And I guess I'm just trying to looking for tips on like how do you navigate that process of basically letting go of your former self that is so much attached to your job. Like your identity is so ingrained in this.
I think Mohini and Manisha both have some advice for you. So, Mohini, do you want to go?
Yeah, great question. I can relate, definitely relate to this. I've gone through this many times, hundreds of times over. That's literally how Rani Rising came to be, because it is so against what we've been told and taught, that you have this one career and you have this one job and you follow through with it for the rest of your life. And that's it.
Yeah.
And what happens if that's not what you fucking want to do? What
Yeah.
happens if you change your mind? What happens if you do the thing and then you decide that that is not fulfilling anymore? What if you decide that that wasn't fulfilling to begin with?
Yeah.
And so I give yourself permission to start over. A big thing for me is life happens when you're making plans. For
Yeah.
real. Life happens when you're making plans. You can plan all day long, and trust me, I have done that many times in previous versions of myself as a way to control what the outcome was. And more often than not, that plan went out the damn window and flew to India and then somewhere else after that, like
Yeah.
that wasn't the plan that I was supposed to follow, or it was a plan for a short amount of time. And so I think permission to grow and evolve and change and shift, and acceptance that you are going to grow and evolve and shift, and
Mhm.
allow that to be whatever you want it to be, whatever it's meant to be. And you're in that empowered place where you're creating it. It's sometimes a lot easier, I'm putting this in air quotes, when life's path has been very planned out for you, because you know what the next step is. You're following the timelines, you're following, because someone, likely our parents and their parents and culture and all these different things, have laid everything out for you, so it's a lot easier that way. Is it fulfilling? Not in my experience. You're walking a new path, you're creating your own path, and that it's different.
Yeah. It's just hard, like when your parents are kind of like questioning you, and like my dad, he was like, "What? Like you're giving up your titles for what again? Like, just to like work from home and this kind of thing." And I'm like, yeah, like that's kind of what, like they just don't see it as like, oh, like you're promoting yourself. It's like seen as a downgrade. And that's why I find also kind of challenging, is like not to feed into that too much, like what
Mhm.
other people expect of me.
I'll
And
say
that's
you're
it's a
adding a
big
new
part.
title. Yeah, I'll say you're
Yeah.
adding a new title. You're adding CEO. Amrutha, do you want to
Yes.
Yeah.
comment?
Yeah, I
Amrutha?
actually wanted to say that, like, you said it yourself, like, trust your gut. Like, you're like, this is what my gut is telling me. I want to get out of this other thing, and I want to do this other thing. And I can throw in all the cliches, like leap in the net will appear, trust yourself, move forward with, I can say all those things, but they're cliche, but they're true. I have made decisions in my life in the past couple of years, which was more heart over head. Like, logically, the decision didn't make sense. Like, it's
Hmm.
like, why would I do that? But the logical decision still didn't make me feel more at peace. Doing the thing that made my heart happy, or my gut instinct was like, well, I think I'm going to do this thing, even though it might be harder than the clear logical path. The clear logical path stresses me the fuck out. Like, just thinking about the logistics of it, thinking about that logic and what's kind of stress that brings, it just doesn't feel worth it, even though it seems like it is the right thing to do. It seems like the most
Hmm.
sensible thing to do. The other path seems, quote, less sensible, but it will make me happy. And also, even if I acknowledge what is the worst possible outcome of taking this other thing, is that it doesn't work out. Right. But
Yeah.
I made the decision that I knew I wanted to make, that in my heart I wanted to make, not my head, My heart wanted to make this decision. And so I did it.
Yeah.
I have free will to make that decision. And I made the decision and I'm working towards it. And what I have come to find is that as long as you work towards a goal, you will succeed in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not the same end goal anymore. Because in that path, the end game can change, right? You can still resign and go towards the goal of like coaching, but then instead of becoming like one kind of coach, you might realize through that path, oh, actually I would rather pivot a little bit in this direction and become this other type of coach. And you're still gonna, like, that journey is still gonna lead you in all sorts of ways, just like the logical journey will, but the choice that you're making will make you happier. And so that goes back to my little point about perspective, is that by taking that leap of faith and knowing that net will appear, like, we all as women, I think, are very ambitious and hardworking, right? So I had even my therapist tell me when I was like really stressing out about my career and that next job and this and that, and she's like, well, have you ever let yourself fail before? Have you ever let yourself be destitute? Have you ever let yourself run out of money? Like, no. Okay, so then how badly do you think it's going to go if you make this choice over the other choice? And kind of that slapping me in the face and going, that's true. I'm not going to let myself run out of money, or I'm not going to let myself get to such a terrible state of things that I'm going to absolutely hate the choice that I made. Right. So I think trust yourself. My I guess advice you would be like, trust yourself a little bit better. Which I know is easier said than done. Trust me, I get that.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you so much for that
Thank you.
question.
Yeah.
Let's I have one more question in the career that, and actually Princey's ties this in nicely. So she asked why safety is important in the work environment. How come females, how can we be in a healthy environment when it always seems like females are being like in the competitive? So we actually had talked about this. We have a question around mentorship and why having female allies in the workplace. I'd like to throw this to Vaidehi because you're one of the ones who are in that traditional corporate environment right now. Could you talk a little bit about how mentorship has helped in your career, how key female leaders or female mentors have maybe helped you and impacted you in your career journey?
Yeah, certainly. I would have to say that one of the organizations I worked for was heavily female dominant. And so I'm grateful to be in an environment that had a lot of directors and managers that were female, and were able to learn from them and easily was able to be taken under their wing. Not to say that the male counterparts didn't also mentor me in other ways, but it was just amazing to be in a workforce. This was 2019 when I kind of entered corporate from nursing to a tech background. And like for technology, right? There's not a lot of women in IT to begin with. And so in the healthcare setting, not everyone was a nurse or someone that transitioned over from healthcare, where nursing is a female dominated field. And so I had amazing people to take me in that I could openly reach out to, that rooted for me. I actually recently left that for the consulting world. And they did it by allowing me to ask very vulnerable questions like, what is your salary? How can I move up? And I struggled with this a lot because it was like, I think we talked about it earlier when I don't remember who was talking, and I wanted to say that like being a South Asian person in the career, you really don't have a map of what climbing the corporate ladder is, because yes, you can see it from your counterparts that are Caucasian, but they don't have the obligations of being a mother or a daughter-in-law, or maybe having more responsibilities with their kids, or attending South Asian events and getting ready for stuff with your kids that are just so different. And so I was just kind of going over with this in my head as somebody was talking about it, is that we have to create that path for us by ourselves and see what that's like. And so when it came for me to quote unquote climb the corporate ladder, it was like I thought I did the hard work, as you're always told to do, and you think you get rewarded. That didn't happen. Then you learn, oh, maybe I should ask for it. Then you ask for it, you become vulnerable. That didn't happen. You retrieve. And then what ended up happening was I left the organization, because although I had all the female, counterparts and mentorship rooting for me, it was at that VP level, we didn't have it, and so it was kind of tough in my journey. And I really wish that, as we mentioned, like DEI and stuff, in part of that, and like, when we talk about this with other people, I think you have to remind folks that that allows women to be at the same table. And so it's not about quotas and what. I've never been in a position to hire people, so I don't know, but it's like, it's saying that it's not necessarily saying that women deserve the job because we need to fill a quota. It is that they deserve to be at that table. And if you look at it from a different perspective, that is the workplace better with diversity and inclusion? Absolutely, right? Because we can see it from all different perspectives. We as South Asians bring a different perspective and ethic to the corporate world. But I think back to like mentorship and stuff, I think from my perspective, I offer it as much as I can when other nurses or anyone younger than me is able to, or reaches out and has questions. I'm happy to. I don't like to gatekeep. We are not better when we're trying to, gatekeep a lot of this stuff. And so if we can share it, I'm happy to share it because we get better by making others better around us.
Amazing. We do have another audience member. Sangeeta, did you have a question or are you just joining in? You're on mute, hon. You're on mute, Sangeeta. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just came back from work, so that's why I'm just joining late, but I'm glad that I'm able to join. Yeah.
Wonderful. Awesome. We're on the topic of career and mentorship. I agree. Vaidehi, I think I also benefited a lot from having amazing, strong female bosses who wanted to see other females succeed. And whether that looks like DEI or whatever, like they prioritize that. And I think that is what we need to do to answer Princey's question is make sure that we as women, as we move from that victimhood to empowerment mindset, we're bringing others along with us. So with that, I'd like to transition to our next topic. I think this is going to be a big one. So our next overarching topic is the concept of family in our lives. And I think, during our pre-call, and one of the consistent themes that we came up with is that family is different to every single one of us. We're in different stages of our lives. Some of us have children, some of us are not. So chose, some of us have family, like parental obligations. So family can be anything. Some of us have really strong friendship connections that we have an obligations to. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that relationship when it comes to family and transitioning out of career. As a woman who's navigating career and family personal ambitions, what have you learned about maintaining strong and equal partnerships with your significant others or family members where they respect the decisions that you're making and in terms to when it comes to your career? And I know there was an anonymous question that was around career choices and relationships, so hopefully this addresses your question as well. And maybe we could start with Mohini on this one.
Okay, so I would love to share about what didn't work for me in order for me to get to the place of now what does work for me. So I was married for quite some time. We were together for 14 years, and what didn't work for me during that time, during that phase of my life, was kind of having very traditional roles, gender norms and roles within the household. And I felt burnt out. I felt really exhausted because I was doing a lot of the things at home while also doing things at work. And I remember just feeling this sense of animosity and resentment around, why does he get to go watch Netflix and I have to go clean up? And when I did ask, the response was, I'm tired. What? You don't think I'm tired? I'm tired too. And so what I learned from that, I learned a lot from that time and phase of my life. And now going into a place of understanding, going back to what I shared earlier about the emotional load and sharing just the responsibility. I'm not the only person living in the house. I'm not the only one doing things. We all got to make this work. If I ever get married again, I would love to have a partner who is supportive in everything, every aspect of life. And that means raising children. I'm not going to be the only one changing diapers, for example. No. And even the emotional load. So all of these little things I feel like are so important when understanding how we can share responsibility and what it looks like to have a supportive partnership. I don't want to raise a man child. I recently met someone and she was like, "Oh yeah, I have 2 kids. They're teenagers, and then I have my husband. So I say that I have 3 sons." And again, she said it like it was a badge of honor. Mental note, not doing that. So I think for me, my own journey has allowed me to kind of explore, okay, I tried this way and this doesn't work for me. And so with that information and with those experiences, I now have more clarity around what is important to me. Emotional maturity is incredibly important to me. Spiritual connection, incredibly important to me. I don't care what kind of car you drive at this point. That was important to me when I was 21 years old. Are you a wonderful, kind human being? Do our values align? That's way more important to me than external successes. 21-year-old version of me, 24-year-old version of me that got married, those external successes were way more important. And I think as we're kind of navigating being women in our careers, I do take up space. I do need support. I don't want to be the one who's supporting my partner all the time. We got to have our flow. And I think that's really important to find out what is your flow? What do you need when you're exploring, and what's actually important? If you like get rid of the shit that our families think are important, and it's all in goodness, like they want you to be safe financially, they want you to succeed, and all these things. When we take those titles away, how do they treat you? When you're sick, how do they treat you? How do you treat them? And that's what's important to me.
Yeah. Part of the mental load is I have to have relationships with his family, right? I have to maintain that he never had them. So it's like all of that work falls on women. Amrita, I'd like to ask you just a variation of this. Like you live, you purposely moved for your career and you live in a different place. How do you navigate now the family pressure and expectation when you're not there? And I'm sure you're getting it in bites and pieces over the phone or something. And it's just like every time I talk, I'm hearing the same lecture. How's your relationship when it comes to navigating career and what you're doing in life and having your family on board?
Yeah, I am also an elder daughter of immigrants, so I am the go-between a lot. I've had every single person in my immediate family, mom, dad, brother, all come to me for various needs and various bits of either direction or advice. And it's not like, it's not like I'm advising my parents. I advise my brother, my younger brother, but also my mom will be like, "Oh, when you come home, I would like you to do this." And my brother and I will joke sometimes that my mom's like a project manager because she like delegates to me and my brother what we can do in the house. And
So
we're
she's
like,
an empowered woman.
yeah, we're like, you're also fully capable of like doing this, like it took us 5 minutes. Instead, you chose to wait 6 months until I came home, or like a month until my brother came home to do it when it could have taken you 10 minutes to figure out. But maintaining that balance of relationships with my family, I had to really have a talk with them of like, I can't live, like I live in Texas and my parents are in New Jersey. I'm like, you can't call me up asking me to help navigate what's going on in the house when I am so literally far away, and still kind of depend on me to like, one person's complaining about another thing and the other person's calling me complaining about the other side of things. I'm like, you two should talk to each other, because you'll realize that you're both upset about different things and think the other person is upset about, like, I can't keep doing that. And so I had to have a conversation with everyone being like, you cannot keep coming to me with all of these things, because I'm trying to figure out my own life and my own shit that my life comes with, like whether it's my career or dating or my own, like I was depressed at one point. I'm like, I have so much already going on as an individual that, you know, you as my parents raised this individual. So it's not like, you know, if I quote run out of money, I'm just going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to go home. I'm going to be like, well, shit, I've run out of money. How did I do that? I'm going to take on that stress for myself. Like, understand that I have my own things that I am worrying about. I cannot worry about your things as well. And I mean that with love and care. I want to be there for you, and I can, but only to a certain extent. You can't, when there's arguments happening in the house, you cannot call me to complain to me about it. And that's not fair. And honestly, therapy has helped so much. We kind of, my family during COVID times, things got like really contentious with, I'm sure, as with a lot of families, you know, when everyone's kind of stuck in the same place and the world feels like it's, you know, falling apart, we don't know all that stuff. We did a little bit of family therapy, saying that we need to learn how to communicate with each other a little bit better. And a lot of feelings came out, especially from me, of like, I feel like I'm always the go-between, and I have to, you know, like protect my younger brother from, you know, parents' mindset. And, you know, that's just a different generation. And then I have to try to really understand them. But then it's also my dad and I arguing about like, why do I have to understand him, but he can't understand me? Where is that? So there was a lot of discussion, and it was not easy. There's a lot of South Asian parents out there who don't believe in therapy, you know, my dad included. And yet we came together for the common purpose of like, well, we need to fix something. Otherwise, we're all just going to be mad at each other the entire time. And it's going to be the same kind of patterns, and that's not going to be helpful. So are we interested in fixing it or not? And so with that, my dad was like, okay, like, let's try whatever this is. And so we did, but it is quite, there is effort that has to go into it. And if there's also family members, parents, whomever, who are not willing to listen, then I think there's also the need to like take a step back and recognize like, well, yes, that might be my sibling or my parents, and I appreciate them in one way of providing and doing all that they could for me. For my sake, for my own mental load, I need to step away, or I need to take a break from this relationship. And I will say that after moving out of my parents' house, my relationship with my parents got so much better. And I really credit it to the fact that like, I think distance makes the heart grow fonder, which is like, once I was like fully living on my own away from them, did I really be able to understand certain ways of which I was brought up, or even understand certain perspectives of like what they might have gone through, of like the struggle of like being in a new place, having to figure out community, having to figure out who you can trust, where to find Indian groceries, like, you know, all those things, and being like, cool, I can get it. And I think also in return, my parents understood me, or maybe even found a certain level of respect for me in a way that they were like, oh, she moved to a completely new place. She didn't really know anyone. And now like 5-6 years later, she's got a community, she's got all this down pat. She learned how to cook Indian food, like, you know, all these things. And so it took some time, and nothing happens overnight. You have to be patient, but having those hard conversations really matter, and finding that balance, whether it is career, dating, difference of opinion, what it can be about anything, but really trying to figure out the right way to have that conversation with your parents, or family, or whatever family means to you, whether it's your spouse or, you know, family, friends, anything. Just trying to have the conversation
In-laws.
and coming from a good place. Sorry? Oh, in-laws, yeah.
In-laws.
I think also like, you know, another thing is that like, as long as it's coming from a good place, like your intentions are well, I think it'll be, you're going to hope that it's received well, right? And if they don't receive it well, don't carry that with you. It's not your fault. If you were well-intentioned, like, hey, I just meant this in good faith, I wanted to have a frank conversation about it, and this is the best way. And, you know, you can also listen to like, I didn't like that you came this, okay, like, understood, but let's keep talking through it. And there's so much that can come from just a simple conversation.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, being an eldest daughter, we're part of that sandwich generation. My father recently passed, so I'm helping my mom navigate how to handle the business things. Meanwhile, I've got kids and family on this side. It is a push and pull a lot. That actually is a great segue into, I think, what we called one of our hot topics. And Maneesha, I'll tee this up for you first, but you know, managing stress, setting boundaries, and fostering that mental well-being for us when it comes to that family aspect. what would you say are some red flags that you've seen when it comes to the parents' generation or that maybe that older generation that came before us? Red flags that we as women can stand on our own and recognize that this isn't right. I think somebody put in the chat earlier, gaslighting or following tradition just for tradition's sake. I'd love to hear kind of what would you say are important values or lessons to take away versus just following these tropes and what really are red flags when it comes to family relationships.
Okay, that is a good one. Let me gather my thoughts. Red flags in the family. I'm gonna get to this in a roundabout way. I'm gonna describe a conversation that took place. So I think I mentioned earlier in the hour that there was a fertility struggle that I went through with my ex-husband. And as many of us have, we have WhatsApp chats with our family members, right? So the entire extended family is on one group chat on WhatsApp. And I have grown up, fortunately, with all my dad's siblings and all of their children and my cousins. And so we're all on this one chat. And my ex-husband and I were in a position that we were able to purchase properties. And as a client of coaching, I think it's important to celebrate my wins. And I tend to bring these to the chat. So like, hey, just wanted you guys to know this is a property we just purchased in Baltimore. We're renting it out. It's part of our nest egg that we're building. And I did that a couple of times on two different occasions. And my dad side chatted me, as we have these side chats on WhatsApp. And he was like, Maneesha, you need to be careful. It's not a good idea to share those things in the chat. And I questioned him and he's like, well, it might make somebody feel bad. What if they can't do the same? What if other people are not as well off or not as doing as well or don't have the level of income and success that you do? You don't want to share that in the family chat. Something didn't sit right with that advice to me. And I had to think about it. And I came back to him and I said, Dad, you know what I've been through and you know the fertility struggles that I've had. What about the fact that other people in our chat are sharing that they're pregnant? What about the fact that they're sharing that they're pregnant a second time and a third time? What about the fact that my brother now has 3 children? What do you think it feels like for me? Do you want them to stop sharing these successes in this family chat? And it didn't dawn on him that it's almost the same thing. So why is it okay to share some things like pregnancy? And why is it not okay to share things that are related to money, to financial success? And I think maybe not a red flag, but it is something that we see as sort of a maybe like a double standard in some way, not a gendered double standard, but a success double standard. And I think it's important to just have a balanced approach. And I didn't think my dad had that at that moment until we had this discussion. And then I think his eyes were quite open to this idea that it is okay. And some people are going to feel bad. And that doesn't mean you can't share in their successes. And the people that are your family, I think they're going to be there with you in your successes and your hard times. And I think like having that honest conversation with my dad was helpful in fostering that mindset for him. But I have seen time and time again, my dad will take this authoritarian voice and commanding stance when it comes to his opinions that both my mom and I should adopt simply because it's his opinion. My dad is a Trump supporter. My mom does whatever my dad does. I have discussions with him about what he's talking about. Like he wanted to bring up the discussion about transgendered athletes. And, I had my opinions, he had his. It was very, very difficult to have this conversation with him because he was like, Maneesha, it's common sense. You should think about my common sense. What my opinion is common sense. So I think like in the context of red flag, you could even put that in that bucket. Like the male voice, the what word am I not getting right now? The not paternalistic. You guys will remind me what word I'm trying to think.
Patriarchy.
Thank you. Yes, that's the word. you know, that voice is the strongest and should be the voice that all others follow. That opinion should be the one that all others follow. And honestly, it came through in my marriage as well. My ex-husband, even though we decided we're not going to have children when we first married, when he changed his opinion, he was like, "What? All women want children. Why wouldn't you want children? Are you sure? Because maybe you're not thinking about it enough. Maybe you haven't given it enough thought. Maybe you need to take a second and think about this." Right? And it's like, wait a second. Are you saying that I can't have my own like organic opinion separate from yours, even though it's butting up against the norm and the convention? So like this idea that only one side could be right, there's no way that there could be a different opinion, that I think is a true red flag. That only your
Yeah.
way is right. And I think another important red flag that I've noticed in my current relationship that is now healed is this idea that so you said red flags in the family, but I want to bring this up because I think it might come up in other places. This idea of emotional maturity, and when somebody's buttons are pushed, when my boyfriend's button gets pushed, and he like breaks down and either stonewalls, meaning like ignores me for a long time, or is unable to voice what's actually happening for him, but rather shuts down or blames or gaslights. I don't know if everybody knows what gaslighting means, but it's like trying to make the other person feel like they're the ones who are at fault without taking responsibility for what they may have done. These red flags, when they start happening and accumulating, it really makes you feel like something's wrong with me. And I started to feel like something was wrong with me. So I did break up with him. And then like miraculously, this person really got the help that he needed to get. And we're really good right now. But red flags were there and I was ready to walk away because they're not surmountable. Like you can't fix that in a person. It's only when they decide, and it's only when he decided to take the emotional responsibility on his own that we were able to move through that relationship. So I would say like if you're seeing red flags in a person that you're dating or somebody that you're already in a relationship with, it's okay to let them actually be red flags and do something about it. You can leave, you can walk away, no matter what the sunk cost is already, right? No matter what you've already put into it.
Our theme of intuition, trust your gut. It's
Yeah.
not going to steer you wrong. Yeah. Panelists, anybody else want to jump in? Kind of like navigating family relationships as we're moving from that traditional generational aspect to the more of this modern mindset that we're in now.
I just wanted to add a comment to what both Maneesha and Amrutha said. Like, yeah, we talk about the sandwich generation, but I don't think everyone has like, it's amazing that Amrutha, you were able to do this with your family and go through family therapy. Like I come from parents that don't even speak English, like talk about finding a therapist for them. And um, sometimes parents don't receive that well, right? Like I think in some instances, you want to address red flags, but it sometimes distances that relationship more than it heals it. And it's like everyone here, you know, it's awesome that we are in a space where we could navigate these discussions, but the end end of it might not go well. But it's always about your mental health, and if you're able to stand up for yourself and kind of create the space that you need, it's always going to be a tough journey. Same with what Syra mentioned, navigating anytime you're at a fork in a road, right? Like what avenue do you choose? It's like my mental health, my space, my time, my self matters more. And I think a lot of times we put ourselves behind so many other things: career, life, family, friends, guilt. I have a lot of immigrant guilt I work through, and I put that before me. But sometimes you have to remember to, I think what Radha says well is like, you're not that crazy. Trust your intuition, trust your gut. And at the end of the day, what should happen will fall into place, and what will happen always does.
Love it. We had a second part to this question, so I'll ask that before we move on to our final topic. But just like we talked about, managing the parents' generation, how do you ladies think, or would you think about teaching these values and lessons to your future children and how they're going to grow up? How are you going to approach disciplining children versus how you were disciplined, giving positive reinforcement? What does respect of elders and all of that kind of mean? And then would you talk about mental health and gender equality and all those other societal topics with your children? And this is open-ended, whoever wants to go.
I want to say about like, so of course I would love to have not of course I would like to have children at some point in the future, but what I have seen with like nieces, nephews, friends, children, I have seen how well children communicate or are taught to communicate these days. And maybe I don't know also because like in the context of myself being a child and how I communicated, but I do know what I've carried with me, you know, growing up and having my experiences and the whole like, you know, our dad having a certain opinion or a certain bit of advice and you have to follow it, and you know, all of don't question, don't, you know, second guess anything or stop asking too many questions. This is what our family said that we had to do, and so we just do it. We didn't ask them questions, kind of thing. When I see children of today being encouraged to ask particular questions, or my friends not freaking out when, you know, their child falls and bumps their head or anything happens, like just like the small subtle differences that I've seen. Also kind of like co-raising my younger sibling, right? Like, you know, my brother did at one point say, he's like, yeah, you're like my third parent. And I was like, no, I'm your cool older sister. But yeah, no, I did, you know, I did have to babysit. I did have to watch him. I did have to, you know, and there were certain things in that. And I saw how my parents treated him and kind of learned certain things. And so I now have that feeling of like, oh, I would never do that to my children. So I think that breaking that intergenerational trauma also is something that we like carry with us of like, oh, I would not implement the same things that were implemented on me to my future children. And I would really encourage them to be able to speak with me openly. And I'm the kind of person who's always open to feedback. So I would like to hope that when I do become a parent, if my child was like, hey, I didn't like that this happened, I would be able to receive that and say, okay, let me try to understand what is a more effective way to parent or to help you feel more at ease, to where we can both trust each other. We don't have to agree all the time, but at least we can trust each other. And I think that's something that like I didn't get to a place with my parents until like I, you know, turned 30 or something, where I had to be like, I am 30 years old, you know, like, can we talk like we're adults and stop treating me like I'm 16 and still living in that house, kind of thing. And having that realization. And I think from like a lot of arguments, probably my parents slowly started to learn, but now I've seen them say it to other parents who are like, can you believe my daughter is not married yet and she's 38? Or like, you know, oh, my daughter is marrying a Chinese guy instead of an Indian. What am I supposed to? And my parents are like, yo, perspective, like, you know, and maybe their perspective is not like as, you know, beautifully polished as I would like it to, like, you know, hey, okay, well, at least she's marrying a guy, whether he's Chinese or whatever, at least it's not a woman. I'm like, that's its own problems, but you know, perspective, you know, but like, you know, my daughter's not married, she's 38. Oh, I'm so stressed out. And he's like, you know, maybe even my dad being like, well, maybe don't push her because you think if you push her more, it's going to happen. I think she's just going to get more pissed off at you. Like, we leave our kid alone. We're every now and then we're like, this guy, and she's like, no. And we're like, all right. So just things like that I'd love to
Amazing.
change for my own children.
So I think, yeah, family, you know, it definitely comes with the challenges. And as Hassan Minaj says, a lot of this is rooted in that log kya kahenge mentality. In India, they come from communities. It is much more of that, you know, we society. And then we growing up here in America, we're in that I society. So trying to blend those two cultures fundamentally is, I think, where a lot of it happens. Well, thank you for that. I think our next topic, our last topic, our juiciest topic, this is one where I like to chat a lot, is about dating and relationships. We've already gotten a lot of questions. So let me just tee up the topic and then we'll dive into some of these questions. But you know, where I'm coming from is obviously when we're dating, everybody has these ideas that I need 6'6", right? 6'5", 6 foot, six figures, whatever. But we often forget those core qualities that are going to manifest in a relationship. And a lot of that, I think, Maneesha, you talked about this earlier, that emotional intelligence, that intuition, does that guy want to bring into it? So let me ask this question. And we'll start off with Vaidehi and Amrutha. What core values that should be shared between partners that create compatibility when it comes to what you want in a relationship, raising children, whatever that looks like. How do you balance the attraction and that flirty feeling of the now with the long-term goals of what you want in life? And then lastly, where does emotional intelligence come in and how does that impact aspirations when it comes to a relationship? So Vaidhi, can we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Dating, again, also one of my favorite topics. It's like beat to the ground. I think about this a lot, right? What core values do I find most important? And I think I can list them off and it'd be a laundry list, right? But then there's a barometer of like what matters the most, how can you rank them? And I think I've come to this point where to me, it's do we view life the same way? It's like, how many of these are gray zone? Do we understand that the big things matter? You know, it's all about the little things, and are they the same little things? And is it about the big picture? And is it the same big picture? Um, Obviously, core values, loyalty, respect, good ethics, all of that matter, but everything is very subjective. And so it's like I've met people on the same wavelength, and it's so I've noticed in those relationships, and what was successful is that we were both able to view that this is what matters the most. And if that's where we can kind of set the bar, hopefully I trust in that relationship that no matter what life throws at you, that you still bring the right topics to the table, bring the right discussions to the table, can come um, and have a healthy argument or discussion to kind of get through that. And I think the second part to it is like having high emotional IQ and intelligence, and all of this is at the basis of it all. You have to have really good communication. Men and women communicate a lot differently. Just gender roles are different, and biologically we're different. So I think finding someone that is willing to have hard conversations with you, look at disagreements, and even if you have to agree to disagree, like, do you still choose that person every day despite some of your core values not aligning, some of your viewpoints not aligning? And one of my favorite things to ask people in relationships, and some of my friends that are on today, is if you're married to someone, like, what makes this work for you guys and why this person? And a lot of times it's the vibes are the same. We choose each other every day. We don't believe in soulmates, but we believe this is right for now. I just knew the minute I met this person, this was one, because when I see them, it reminds me of home, or like a feeling of familiarity. And so I base a lot of my dating on some of those feelings. And I think when it's the right person, you'll know. And I hate to say that because it's so cliche, but I think at the same time, you can want all those things that you talked about, like someone who makes a lot of money, someone who's 6 feet tall, someone who has, maybe a big family that you aspire to marry into, or whatever might be the case. But I think you have to dial it back so many notches to say, are you on the same page? Do you view life the same way? And also, do you complement each other? And so a lot of these things factor into dating and finding the right partner. And I think one more note to that is looking for a partner in your 30s is so different than looking for a partner in your 20s. A lot of times, a lot of people, I've noticed, unfortunately, we're at the age where a lot of these divorces and in relationships fall apart, is you're just kind of with the partner because you think you're with that partner. They're high school sweethearts, they're college sweethearts, set up by family. You don't know any better. Sometimes those relationships, you're not happy in those marriages after a while. And the beauty of it is at 30, you can get what you want. It's just a lot tougher because we know exactly what we're looking for. Sometimes you can't get it for so many other reasons, but that's my perspective on it. Pass it over to Amrutha.
Amrutha, I'd like to add in an audience question if you could hit this angle as well. We got an anonymous question saying, why does there seem to be a strong emphasis on prestige when seeking a partner, like that, a career, that income? And the conversation revolves so much around prioritizing that external stuff in a partner.
Yeah, I will address that first. I think that is something that's been drilled into us by our parents and that generation, because whether they were arranged or set up or some variation of that, you know, our parents are, you know, brought together in that way. What is it that our grandparents were looking for them, right? Do they have a good job? Where are they going to go with that job? Do they make enough money? Are they going to be able to take care of you? And things like, do they communicate? Are they loving? Are they kind? Whatever. Like they were like, that'll come later, or you will teach them to be that way, right? And that is what that's what our grandparents looked for our parents, is like just someone to take care of you, or like do really well so that you can take care, you know, for a man, it's like do really well because you have to take care of a wife and a household and children, right? And then for women, it's like do well enough so that a good man will want you. You know, you'll get a good husband, you'll snag a good husband who also has, you know, the right title and money and etc. And so I think that's the perspective with which our parents come from and say, well, that's what we want for you. I spoke to a woman a few months ago who was telling me about a guy that she was talking to, and she was like, his profile had like all the right things. It was a good profile. And I was like, what makes it a good profile? What makes this guy's profile a good one? And she stopped and thought about it, and she's like, well, you know, he has like a job and he's the right, like, you know, same type of Indian, and he's got this good career and all this. And I was like, okay, but why do you like that profile? Is it because your parents taught you to see profiles in this way, biodatas in this way, of they have a good job, they're the right kind of Indian, the right caste, whatever other nonsense that, you know, our parents have dictated, or their parents dictated to them, saying that like, this is what a good match is. But does that match make sense to you? Because even what my parents still send me today, I'll be like, what's this dude's name? You know, like one time they sent me a profile. I'm like, what's his name? Like, what is he, like, what else, does he have hobbies? You know, they're like, this is what he wants to do. He wants to be a doctor. I'm like, I don't really give a shit. Like, what does he like to do in his spare time? Does he smile? Because he sent me one photo and he's just like, and I'm like, is he gonna laugh at my jokes? Like, I need a man who's gonna laugh with me through life. So things like that. And I think that's why there's such a big emphasis on like, do they have the career? Do they have all this wealth and title and accolade? And I think that's what eventually gets trickled down to us, you know, in our generation. But to echo all the things that Vaidehi said from the original question, I agree. Like, I can also list a laundry list of similar qualities, but to relate to my previous point that I talked about is that communication at the end of the day, like, are you able to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk, and say like, if you tell me, I actually had a guy tell me once, like, oh, I believe everything, every disagreement can be resolved with a discussion. And I'm like, beautiful. Yes, great. This is going to be great because we're always going to be willing to discuss what's going on here and like do like regular check-ins with each other, right? And discuss, you know, where we're going, whether it's good, bad, whatever. And then surprise, surprise, he couldn't talk the talk, where when I was like, hey, can we talk about this and figure out why we're, you know, where we're missing each other, he just wasn't like following through, or like told me he would call me and then didn't call me. And I'm like, what is this, like 2001, where like I'm still like waiting by the phone to like get someone to call me? Like, no, this is not working for me. And so at the end of the day, one of the things that I really would appreciate as being able to help figure out that common factor of like, do we want each other, is communication. I think it was even said in the chat that like, if a man says something that's like, it's not received well, like if I let him know like, hey, I didn't super love that, do you really feel this way? Or can I explain to you how I'm feeling about that? Can we discuss? And if they're able to receive that and be like, holy shit, I never thought about it that way. Now I have something to think about and I'm going to try to fix that. And let's not mistake it with like having a, you know, like a case where like, oh, I can fix the man. No, it's that, is he willing to be like, oh, I'm willing to receive your feedback. Just like I've said that, like, you know, even when I have a child, if they're like, hey, I didn't love that, mom, I'm willing to receive that feedback and be like, okay, well, how can I help make this better? How can I help us hear each other? And that's the kind of partnership that I would want as well. Like, how are we going to help each other grow and help each other evolve? Because that's another thing. Growth is so uncomfortable sometimes. Having the tough conversations, making the effort, identifying that like, hey, you keep making the same mistake or you keep doing the same action, even though I've told you I don't like it. Am I not being clear enough? Do you not realize you're doing it? Do you want me to keep calling you out on it? Or is that super annoying? Like, how do we want to work through this? And that was one of the things I explained to like my mom about why dating has its pros rather than just being partnered up with someone and just being like, it's good enough based on, you know, this bio data of like, they have a job. And they are the right height and age or whatever. You know, if after X amount of attempts and time, hey, they're not picking up what I'm putting down, or they're not willing to pick up what I'm putting, or anything like that, being like, you know what, I'm not sure I want this forever. And if you can't, you know, if you as the potential partner are not willing to want to keep me around and try to adjust, especially if I know I'm adjusting, then like, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
And
That goes
another
to
thing that, oh,
I was going to say Kirtana's comment. She said, in her opinion, sometimes men initially, you know, they might come across as red flag, but the real distinction is if their willingness to reflect, acknowledge, and understand what happened, consider other perspectives. I think that's
yes.
exactly what you were just saying.
Yes. And then the final
Awesome.
thing I was going to say is that like, don't be ashamed of what it is you want. Like, you're going to have certain preferences for a reason. And I don't think you need to be ashamed of what you want. If that's what you know is going to make you happy and make you feel good as well in that partnership.
Wonderful. All right. I have another hot topic for you ladies. This one I'm going to direct to Maneesha and Mohini. We talked a little bit about fertility earlier. I think when it comes to dating, especially, that's like such a constant dating in our 30s. I feel like all men have become fertility experts and, you know, like I have a PhD in this kind of family planning stuff. So I kind of want to just throw a point out there and then you ladies can jump in. Men are equally at risk when it comes to infertility, but it never really comes up. And then it's always about age in a woman's life and, you know, how she needs to be healthy or fit or what she needs to do in order to be prepared for motherhood. So can you talk a little bit about like how does that affect us emotionally, psychologically, and where do we get the support when it comes to navigating, hey, maybe I don't want to have kids. Maybe we decided this together and you're changing the game without consulting me on this. And then the culture around, you mentioned earlier, you're only successful if you have children and this and that, versus kind of what is scientifically available and knowing that we can have healthy pregnancies into much later ages. So I'd like for you two to kind of address a little bit about fertility and timelines, and either you can go first.
Ooh, yeah, big one. I think we should first like kind of put some stuff out there, like what all of this even means. So if you want kids and if you have fertility, if you're fertile, you may not ever deal, right, with any fertility issues. If you have a partner who also wants children and everybody's on the same page and you're fertile and you pop out kids easily, great. That is not always going to be a problem. Like every relationship doesn't have to face a fertility issue. I just want to put that out there. And so in my case, I met my ex-husband at age 37. That's already geriatric age when it comes to fertility. It's a technical term in the medical community. And so like if I were to get pregnant at 37 or 39 or whatever, that would be a geriatric pregnancy, not joking. That is exactly what it's called. There's all kinds of ways to test your fertility at the get-go. Like if you want to have children and you want to pursue how fertile you are, you can always go to a doctor and they can do various tests. And I just want to describe a little bit about the fertility journey just in case people are not really aware of what happens. So essentially, you can be tested in so many ways. You can do blood work, you can do ultrasounds, you can figure out how, you know, far along your numbers are. They'll give you all this data. And then essentially they'll tell you, these are your chances of getting pregnant. And they'll test not only your stuff, but they'll test your partner's sperm. If you're going to be using a known partner, you could have a donor sperm. You could have, if your eggs are not going to work, you could use donor eggs. And if your eggs and the partner's sperm aren't going to work, you could use donor embryos. You could use somebody else's uterus as a surrogate. Like there's so many combinations of how you can make this work. And of course, if none of that works, you can do adoption. So you want to consider sort of like all of this stuff going into it. And I would just like have these conversations at the beginning. Why not? Like if it could become a thing in your relationship, you might as well talk about that. Like we already talk about money, we already talk about children, we already talk about religion. You might as well talk about what is our path to having a family. I thought we talked about it enough in my relationship before we got married. Apparently, it was not. We were not on the same page once we got married, and that was a shock to me. So I don't want anyone else to be shocked, you know, once you're married and then, or once you're partnered and deciding to have children with this partner. You don't have to be married, of course. That you're on the same page, like even before and after. So that would be really nice to have that conversation before in depth. What were your other questions, Radha?
Actually, a lot of it is around timelines, like pressures. And
Yeah.
that's really, thank you for sharing that you were 37 when you got married. I think that we see this in the single ladies, or my daters down there, you guys can chime in too, but I see this all the time with my clients. It's like, men are like, I need a 3-year arbitrary age gap between me and that girl because I want to have kids. And I'm like, so
Okay.
if you're 40 and she's 37, it's not going to increase your chances any. I think it's
Yeah. A lot of it that is coming from I want to have kids, meaning I want to use my sperm to have the children. Like children can come anytime you want, right? Like you can, well, you can sign up for an adoption agency at any age. Now, whether you get a child or not, that's a whole different story. But you know, the timeline is, I think they're determining it based on I want to use my sperm, her eggs, create an embryo that will grow into a healthy baby. The chances of that happening are definitely higher if you're younger. There's no doubt about that. What's young? I don't know, maybe 23, 25, 27. I don't know when it becomes risky, but for sure there's a time in there like around age 25 for women that it starts getting riskier to have a healthy child. And then definitely by 37, when I met my husband, you know, the high likelihood of having either genetic problems or just like miscarriages and all that stuff. So I think that the timeline is again, we look at women as the conduit for healthy children, and that's just not the whole story. Because our physical health is one aspect, but remember, we have to also have good mental health and good psychological health. That plays a huge role in fertility for women and men. So if like you don't have a supportive partner and you have a terrible job and you have a terrible boss or you're fighting with your in-laws, guaranteed it's going to be hard to A, want to have sex with your husband, and B, try and get pregnant and stay pregnant. Like getting pregnant is one thing, but miscarriage is so common. And so like staying pregnant is another journey in itself. And the fact that people actually birth children is such a miracle, right? Like we always have to, I think that's something we have to remember. Like it's not the guarantee. The guarantee is not you're going to birth a normal, typical child. I'm sorry to use the word normal. It's a miracle when that happens. So there's just so many factors that I think don't get considered. And I wish that more people would pay attention to these soft factors like my mental health, your mental health, the health of our relationship, how well we communicate, just like we've been talking about. So nothing to be taken for granted. It's not as easy as it sounds. For some people it might be, but there's so many people that have trouble with this, and people don't talk about it enough. And how do you find the community that's going to support you through this? Well, I say control the narrative. So when I was talking to my parents, when I was talking about that WhatsApp chat with my family, everybody was on it. And I would tell them, we're pregnant, so we're not coming to this wedding. We are in an IVF cycle. We're not coming to the wedding. We can't travel right now. We got to stay. We don't know when the hormone injection is needed. We got to stay like where we are and go to our lab tests and do all that. Hey, I had a miscarriage. I need you guys all to tell me I'm here for you. I support you. I love you. I don't need you to tell me this person had a miscarriage and then the next time they got pregnant. This person was 39 years old when they had their children and then 41 when they had their second. That not helpful. I'm going to tell you what I need you to say to me so that I can feel supported. So I think like the way to build the community and the support that you need is to control the narrative in the people that you surround yourself with, whoever that might be. And then of course there's so many forums and support groups, Facebook groups. Like I was literally in a Facebook group called Women Physicians with Infertility Now Using Donor Eggs and Embryos. Like it's a group. No, oh yeah. And that's where I got my embryos. I got them from another woman physician on that site. It was a donation. And it was a really beautiful story. If we have time, I would love to tell it. But anyway, that's another story of its own. But yeah, I think I answered your question.
Absolutely. Mohini, did you want to chime in?
So I will share very candidly that for 14 years, very large chunk of that, we had quite a bit of unprotected sex, and I never once got pregnant. And we got tested. Everything looked good on paper. Quite a metaphor for the rest of my marriage. And I feel like that was one of the big aha moments for me, that there's something deeper going on here. And yeah, I'm gonna just tell you like what my journey was. It helped me realize how disconnected from myself I was, and how disconnected from my womb space and my yoni and my body and my intuition, and how much I had placed expectation that that would happen easily. And because of my own life stuff that was happened, I was disconnected from my body. Because of his own life stuff that happened, he had his own response. And so there was a disconnect. There was a massive disconnect. And we used to drink. I don't drink anymore. I'm pretty sure he still drinks. But that's like one of the things that you spoke about was lifestyle. For me, moving forward, I'm going to be 40 this year, and I'm excited as fuck to be 40. And the American Western world, like you said, Maneesha, I'm geriatric. That's why when you said it, I put it in air quotes, because I don't believe that to be true. For me, I would love to have a child. If it happens, it happens. I also feel the most connected to my womb, to my body, my health, my lifestyle overall is completely different than before. And that I've gotten a download, a clarity that when I do meet somebody, we are not going to be on the timeline of, oh, we date for 3 years and then we get engaged and then we get married and then we have a kid. That might work for somebody. That worked, part of that worked for me. Previous life. I don't see that happening this in my next future phases of life. I think what I feel is when I do meet somebody and it feels right, it feels like I feel it in my body. I am so connected to my womb and to my body now that I know, like, oh, this person is this is on the right track. Oh, nope. Not that person. And just having those types of understanding, I think for myself has led me to really trust myself, like we spoke about before. And um I just feel there's a different level of knowing. Like there's just a different level of knowing in my body that things will work out as they will. Lifestyle wise, like you spoke about earlier, Maneesha, the stress levels, all of these things, what you eat, who you surround yourself with, what you are consuming, and I mean in every way, food, drink, TV, media, everything, the music, your physical environment, your social environment, all of that plays a huge impact in how your body is responding to all of that. So it's so important, like you said, it's not just the physical health, but it truly is. I think as soon as I went on that journey, that healing journey of really understanding how disconnected I was, and accepting that that's where I was at, and knowing that that's not where I wanted to continue to be, I needed to make changes. I needed to make huge shifts and changes in my life, and it was just one small step at a time. What can I change moving forward? So timeline wise, who knows? I don't know. According to Western world, I'm geriatric. But again, I don't believe that to be true. Many other countries get pregnant naturally at 47 or something like that, you know? And why can't that be true for us here?
Yeah.
For
Maneesha,
for anyone who wants to explore that, you know? And so I feel it's important to just explore outside of what we've been told is the truth.
yeah, absolutely. Maneesha, do you want to chime in?
One quick other point is that when I was diagnosed with infertility, the reproductive endocrinologist suggested that I lose weight because at that point I was overweight by BMI, and I went into like a deep dive into my my health journey and decided to join this program, this fitness program, alongside my husband. So we both joined this fitness program. It was quite intense. We changed a lot in our lifestyle and started a lot more activity, really started watching where we were eating. You could say we were dieting. We were definitely in calorie deficit and we were exercising a lot. When I didn't get pregnant, you know what I heard from my in-laws. You exercise too much. You didn't eat enough. What's all this exercise you're doing? Are you sure this is good advice? I was a doctor. I was telling them I'm getting advised by my OB, I mean, not my OB, but my reproductive endocrinologist, my trainers, and your son and I are in the same program. And we chose to do this in order to improve our health, in order to try to get pregnant. So that's also something in our culture that's just accepted, right? Like you shouldn't move too much. You should stay like seated and like don't do too much activity. And it's just old wives' tales, you know, and it's not what science tells us. I believe in what the science tells us. I believe staying healthy and doing all the activities you were doing while you were trying to get, you know, while you were not trying to get pregnant is the same thing you should continue doing when you're trying to get pregnant. There's nothing wrong with it, but just be mindful of who is advising you and what their expertise are, because it just might be old wives' tales. And that was something that really irked me because I thought I was following the advice that I was given from a scientific standpoint, and they were really at odds with me, and it just seemed like such hypocrisy. And yes, also during the fertility journey, you asked about like what it feels like. It really feels like failure. Like it feels like your body is not doing what it's meant to do, right? When you're trying to get pregnant, if you want to get pregnant, and you're trying to get pregnant and you can't get pregnant or you can't stay pregnant, it is such a dissonance. It's like, I'm doing all these things. It's the one place you don't have control. You can't control it, you know? And it's like the sooner we accept that there's no control in this journey, the better off you're going to be, the more relaxed you'll be. That's the last thing I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, I think that's a life lesson, right? Expectation, having control, that's all the stuff that we need to kind of move past and let go as we move from that victim mindset to the empowered mindset. You talked about body issues, and I think the last big topic we'll have for tonight is going to spark some good discussion. But dating, right? We think about all these societal expectations on what a woman is supposed to look like, what femininity looks like. Then that translates into having good sex. Like our parents, we didn't grow up knowing about what sex is like, and that all plays into this kind of concept. So I'd like to start off with our daters, Vaidehi and Amrutha. Maybe Vaidehi, you can start, but how do you feel like, when it comes to being comfortable in your body and presenting when you're in that dating aspect? And do you think there's enough space for women to then be empowered to, express their desires and be comfortable with who they are and still demand or still expect or want, sorry, not expect, still want a partner that is quote unquote out of their league physically, things like that? So if I think you want to kind of tackle that first.
Absolutely. I think I struggle with this a lot because my weight fluctuates as well. But I think just helping other folks love their body and be comfortable in their skin, it's like in a panel, all of us, I think we all dealt with certain issues. It's like, how do we empower women to love the body and the skin there? And it's, you can say it so many times, but it comes from a lot of validation. Unfortunately, sometimes you don't want to seek it, but yeah, if someone tells you you look good, like it builds on your confidence, the way you dress, the way you present yourself. And I think that matters a lot when you date. If you have the utmost confidence, you can get, further in your dating journey and put your best self out there and potentially your best foot forward. And so when you're with your body, you feel one with yourself, you are able to navigate those situations and, be intimate with someone and kind of put that forward. I think a lot of times it is a hindrance for women. It's like, do I feel comfortable in my skin? I'm a little bit fat. We have a lot of hair. You can feel insecure about that. And I think a lot of us had to navigate those journeys by ourselves. And it just came from trial and error, learning from other folks. For me, obviously did not have the birds and the bees talk. I actually had to look that up to see which one. I mean, I didn't think about it too much, but I had to look that one up. But I think it does play into factor that like I was a little bit overweight a couple of years ago and I felt stronger and more confident as I shed the weight. And it sucks. It sucks that that's kind of what society has for you. But I think I don't think I'm going to be out of anyone's league at this point because my confidence is there. Like if you have the abs, that's cool. I've had men that, you know, have a nice body that still want me or don't want me. You know, it's like it can be either way. And so that's when you kind of realize it's not so much more about your body and it's not so much about X, Y, and Z, your skin, your hair, your nails, whatever it might be. It's like just who you are as a person and you present yourself can swing the other way. I think I've found partners that genuinely was a stronger match when I was my bigger self. And so it's all over the place. And I think a lot of it is perspective and subjective as well. And so I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, Amrita.
Just like Vaidehi, I also have had struggles with, you know, my own body and body dysmorphia and forever thinking that I am fat and undesirable and only getting validation if someone else wanted to sleep with me, and thinking that like, oh, well, then I must not be disgusting yet if someone does want to sleep with me. And obviously that is even just like thinking about it now, I'm like, oh my God, poor me, that's what my brain was really genuinely telling myself. And when I had that realization, I finally woke up to realize how I was talking to myself or about myself. I cried and I was like, that's so mean. Why am I so mean to myself? And it actually came from, I was casually seeing actually a younger guy. And at one point he was like, you're so sexy. And I was like, shut up. And I walked away. And I was like, I simply could not accept that whatever state that my body was in, that someone who was like younger, muscly, like all this stuff, like just genuinely found me sexy. And I even remember showing him photos of myself when I was like younger, like in my early 20s and whatnot. I was like, look how skinny I was. I can't believe I wasted so much time thinking I was fat. And he was like, cool, like I still like you today. He's like, I don't know who that person is. I don't really care that that person is skinny or whatever, however you feel about that person and that body at that time. I like you the way that you are today. I think you're really confident. I think you're really sexy. Like I don't see an issue with these issues that you're seeing. And I was like, God, I wish I could see myself through your eyes, because somehow I am not able to. And eventually I had to practice body neutrality of like, I'm not upset with my body. It's more of just like, well, this is what it is. If I want to change it, I'll make the efforts to change it. If I believe I'll be happier being skinnier or losing the weight or having more muscle, etc. Okay, that's fine. But I also had to make sure that I was doing it from a place of like, I want to do it, not me being skinnier means me being more desirable, or me, like that's a mental situation, because it could even get to the point where it doesn't matter how much weight I lose, I might still see myself fat because I've been seeing myself as fat since I was like 17 and 16. You know, and like, so like it's a mental thing that was not, I could acknowledge was not going to change. And if I wanted to quote get healthier, it was because I genuinely wanted to get healthier or, you know, change certain behaviors or habits. I also like what really helped me with my body was also on Instagram surrounding myself with like other mid-sized women and they're fat, and like I won't even call myself a big fashion person, a fashionista. I'm not like forever trying to be fashionable, but it really helped to see other mid-sized women influencers on Instagram every time I mindlessly scrolled, to see someone who had a similar body as mine trying on cute clothes and how it fit on them and how it looked on them. And even South Asian, like bigger bodies, just seeing it. And the more I got conditioned, I conditioned it into myself of like, I'm like, I love the confidence that this person has. They have more body than I do, but they are so much more confident in wearing everything that they're wearing. And I can be that too. Because at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter as much. It's about how I present myself and how I choose to present myself. So that was something that again, these things don't happen just overnight necessarily. Like it was a conditioning that I had to feed myself and be like, okay, well, my body is not super skinny, but it's, it's still desired and I like it, and it functions. It does what I need it to do. It allows me to lift heavy things. It allows me to walk certain places. It allows me to dance with, whatever stamina that I do have. And if I want to improve on that, I work on that. And now I can say that I'm at a place where I can actually look at my body and be like, I can see why somebody would want this. Like, okay, I get it. And I think that just came from like, some time of just, again, really conditioning it into myself being like, and if I feel like I want Spanx or, the body shaper or whatever, like, if I want that, like, okay, great. And sometimes I'm like, nah, I want to eat. So like, I'm not wearing that, but who cares? Like, do whatever makes you feel good. And I think when you are able to present your best self, that's going to resonate with a partner. And if you feel good, I think they're gonna catch that vibe, and be like, okay, cool. Like you are a gorgeous, sexy, confident woman and I'm here for it. And a lot of the times these guys they're not overthinking your body the way that you are. And if they are, fuck them. Like not literally, but like, just be like, goodbye. You don't need to have this body, somebody else will. Like, and it'll be great.
Awesome. So we are at time. I don't know, any other panelists want to jump in on this topic?
I think the last thing I wanted to add is just like a lot of folks feel like when they're dating, if you are presented with someone who's super fit, like they feel really like not up to par to date that person. But at the end of the day, like what Amrutha said, what you put out there and what your best self is what matters. And do you have an active lifestyle, or do those things align? It's like, a lot of times we're in our heads about our bodies and our insecurities. And a lot of times we have to grab that out of ourselves and really truly look at the picture from a different perspective. So just wanted to add that. Sorry.
Yeah.
No,
Another
absolutely.
thing sorry, I was also going to talk really quick about like
Women
even in
apologize too much. Stop saying sorry, lady.
You're right. I feel like because I keep interrupting, and so I feel really conscious about that. But I wanted to talk about kind of almost specifically sex. The thing that I have really discovered, which I feel like not enough people talk about, is the shame around it. And just like anything else, the more that we talk about it, the more normal it'll be. So like, they say like, don't yuck anybody's yum, let's not kink shame and all this. But same thing about the other side of the spectrum where like somebody is scared or somebody doesn't know if they should talk about, like, at the end of the day, we all want to orgasm, right? Like that is just something that we all want, like, of course. So I think there's so much importance in just talking about what you like, and you're like, hey, ow, that's like not comfortable. Or just like, actually, I would prefer being spanked. I would prefer you pulling my hair, get a little aggressive with me, or just being like, hey, now, too aggressive. I don't want my hand around my throat or something, whatever. Just talk about it, because at the end of the day, if you as a woman get good sex from your man's going to be really happy about it. And once again, if he's not happy about it, literally fuck somebody else, because like I think it's so important that both parties are getting what they want. And it's so amusing to me when there's so much shame about like, hey, was that good for you? And they're like, yeah. And then like later on you're talking to your girlfriends and they're like, oh my God, that was the worst thing ever. And then he did this weird thing and all that. You can literally just be like, whoa, don't super love that, but let's try this other thing. And using toys, using anything else that will also help get the juices flowing, like do it, because it's more common and I think more desired than people like to talk about. And I think especially as South Asian women, we're told not to want these things, not to expect them, not to talk about them, and all these other things. So the more that we kind of break that down within our own generation, it'll make it also easier for us to talk to our children about these things. Like, I definitely do not feel like I can talk to my mom about these things, but I know in my group of girlfriends growing up, like as I started to discover things, once I stopped fearing God, and I was like, God made me like this. I can't help it. I'm horny. So once I got to that point and I started exploring and figuring things out, then I was like helping advise my girlfriends, because then they were like, ooh, can you, like, is this a normal thing? What if I want to this? And I was like, yeah, we're all discovering this and we're all here for each other to help empower each other in the bedroom as well. Because that's still a really, really empowering place.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I
tangent.
remember just the concept of tampons, right? My mom would never buy them for me. I had to learn, I used to get them from the school nurse because I played sports. So much of that we want to make sure we're changing for the next generation.
Yeah.
Ladies, this has been such an amazing conversation. Audience members, if you guys want to ask any questions, feel free to jump on. But while we wrap up, I kind of just want to re-engage and to bring it back to the central theme of what we had today. We talked about career, we talked about family, we talked about relationships, but the theme and the whole takeaway we hope you guys get from this is that we're going from that victimhood mentality of where we are, what's not working, to flipping it and being empowered in our choices. It's not going to happen right away, but the idea is that you trust yourself one decision and choice at a time, and then trust that in the future things are going to work out. That is how we are empowered in our day-to-day lives. Panelists, I'd love to open it up for you guys for some final remarks. I'll just call on you guys in order. But if there's any final thoughts that you guys want to share with the team or with the audience, we have dropped all your handles for Instagram in there, but if there's anything else you want the audience to know about your upcoming work, please share that as well. Maneesha, we'd like to start with you.
Well, I'm Maneesha and I'm the life coach for Indians. I am on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, but I think the only thing I want to say is I would love to keep this conversation going outside of this talk, whether it's on Instagram or in other events like this. It is so good to get into the juicy details about all of the things that we talked about today. And I can't think of another panel or another group where we can meet other Indian people, other South Asians, and talk about stuff like this. And also just like meet people that are at different stages, right? Like we had a huge range in terms of ages and in terms of where we are in life, what we're doing, and what we've already been through. And it's so enriching. Like I just love that we had this discussion. So I would love to continue the conversation anywhere that you guys want to have it.
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody feel free to reach out. The panelists have been gracious enough. Their Instagram DMs are open, so definitely reach out. Vaidehi, would you like to share your final remarks?
Absolutely. Just echoing what Maneesha said, this has been an amazing discussion from various standpoints. And so I'm glad we have a safe space to do it. And I'm glad that we also have a platform such as Single to Shaadi and all of our Instagrams to be able to just bring the voice, because I think it matters so much that it comes from people like us, and that taboo topics or anything that we weren't allowed to talk about at home, we have an avenue to spread the message. I do have my Instagram page, Life of Vaidehi, and I hope that you guys feel comfortable reaching out for anything that I may have talked about, and would love to keep continuing the conversation, just like Maneesha said. Thanks, Radha.
Absolutely. Mohini, final thought.
Thank you, each and everyone, for such a wonderful. Actually, this side Princey Jain, and I just it is for me, it is a very valuable lesson from you all, the female panelists, and it is great to connect to you all. And thank you so much for giving me such a platform to understand what we can do for future self.
Thank you for joining, Princey. I'm so glad that you're able to contribute to the conversation. You had some great questions that helped us with the move that conversation in a direction that was applicable for everybody. Awesome. Mohini, would you like to wrap up with final thoughts?
Yes, final thoughts. Few things. Consent was a big one that came up for me and I feel like we actually didn't directly talk about it. And I just wanted to name that, like, consent through all of this experience of life. And exploration, like a curiosity of what would it be like for me to do things differently, to exist in this world differently, and an openness, a willingness. I think that was one of the words that was used earlier, was just an openness. And safety. Safety. None of this can happen without safety. And so really being able to connect to that connection with self and with whoever, whatever is beyond you, if you believe in that, whatever partnership, whatever connections, whatever relationships you're exploring, um, create that, because beyond that, there's a lot that's possible. A lot is possible. And that is such an important part of any relationship, is safety. And if that's lacking, mm, yeah, I don't even have the word. It's oof.
Yeah.
I would love to connect. Find me on Instagram, DM me, and yes, let's just continue to create revolutionary relationships in life, because we need that, especially these days, and would love to be some support along the journey.
Thank you so much. And Amrutha, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to leave everyone with, like, empowerment comes from within. So, get yours and, just kind of look within, trust yourself. We talked a lot about that as well. Trust your intuition, trust your gut. It's okay to follow your heart over your head. Things may not logically make sense, but if they feel right to you, go forth and do it and see where it takes you, because that journey itself might just be rewarding. And failure is only what you make of it. Like, if you're going to see it as a failure, then there's still a lesson in that if you choose to extract it. So yeah, just remember, perspective is everything, and that the empowerment is within you. If you'll listen to it and extract it, you'll have it. Yeah, follow me as Kari Badshaw. I also have a podcast coming out with Single to Shaadi. And so I so love answering DMs and talking to other people. So yeah, feel free to message me about any of the crazy shit I said today. Or just to talk, because I like to talk, and you'll hear me talk a lot on both podcasts and my Instagram. So yeah, I'm excited to connect with more people.
Thank you. And I'll just say, for final thoughts, ladies, thank you so much for your time, your energy, your willingness to be support system for all the audience members and beyond. I think we talked about this earlier, that, women helping women, that support system, having a safe space to have these conversations. It is very important, especially in today's culture when there's so many competing narratives out there. So my heartfelt thanks to you. And to the audience members, it is Women's Month. Don't let whatever's happening out there dim your light. Be proud of your accomplishments in any aspect of what they are. You heard the panelists talking about life, career, every aspect we can celebrate success. And so go out there, and maybe not just for this month, but for the rest of your life, be empowered, getting out of that victim mindset, and trusting that the decisions that you make now are the right ones, and you're going to have that better future. So thank you, everybody. With that, we're going to go ahead and end today's session, and have a great and wonderful rest of your night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Radha.